Mr. Harry Miller is 55 years old and he tweeted a limerick. The limerick that he tweeted, I'm not sure why it's called a limerick, it doesn't seem to rhyme, but maybe I'm missing part of the tweet here. He said on Twitter, "I was assigned mammal at birth, but my orientation is fish. Don't misspecies me." That's what he tweeted. Now, if he tweeted something where that was targeted at a particular person that made them feel bullied or harassed, I'd be a lot more sympathetic, yet still wouldn't consider it a criminal offence, requiring investigation by the police, but I'd be a lot more sympathetic to the complaint, at least. But it appears to me that this has been just a general tweet he put out as a general observation he's making about the state of the trans debate. Now, you don't have to approve of that tweet, nor the point he's making, to agree with the next part of what I'm about to say, which is, did that really warrant a visit at his office, at his workplace, by an ominously named community cohesion police officer, a community cohesion officer who went there and visited his workplace and said to him, quote, "I'm here to check your thinking"? The word Orwellian is very overused, unfortunately, because I'm a huge fan of Orwell and always have been. But if it's ever appropriate to use the word, it's when a community cohesion officer visits your workplace and says to you, "I'm here to check your thinking." I mean, what on earth were Humberside Police thinking when they did this? Then they said to him that he's in danger of breaking the law. In danger of, because he hadn't yet broken the law. But their point was, they said that his tweets would be recorded by police, recorded, and therefore he's now in their database, right? Recorded as a non-crime hate incident. A non-crime hate incident. I mean, what is a non-crime hate incident when it's at home? Other than being a thought crime. Which is why I say I use the word Orwellian very advisedly in this day and age, because it's overused by, internet armchair keyboard experts. But frankly, here it's incredibly, it's relevant, it's appropriate. Because what else can a non-crime hate incident mean other than a thought crime? Now, lots of you who would be pro-trans rights, and I like to think of myself as too, would be disgusted at or perhaps disturbed by his sentiment. But I would put it to you, that's not the point of this conversation. Because if you acknowledge fundamentally that thought crime should never be investigated by law enforcement, then a corollary of that is necessarily accepting the fact that people will think bigoted things and even say bigoted things, and as long as they don't target an individual with harassment, those bigoted things should not be the domain of law enforcement. And it's why I often say that no idea should be above scrutiny, just as no person should be beneath dignity. And if he was bullying an individual person, then maybe there's a role for the tech companies perhaps to step in and, temporarily suspend his tweet for bullying. But there's certainly no role here for the law enforcement, for police, and for Humberside Police in particular. So I promised I'd draw an analogy with racism, and here it is. The BNP must remain a legal party in this country, and must remain so without harassment by law enforcement, even though they are a racist and bigoted party. Do you see the distinction? And what's good for me is good for trans people, is good for feminists, is good for men and women and everyone. People must be allowed to harbour bigoted thoughts and express bigotry in general terms. Don't investigate them for quote-unquote non-crime hate incidents. And certainly don't arrest them for it. I want to live in the kind of country where, just as the BNP can exist, a former Muslim radical who has been imprisoned for a thought crime during the War on Terror era can have a radio show. That's what it means to be in a free and democratic country. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The same rights that allow this man to make that joke on Twitter that will offend trans people, no doubt, the same country that provides him with those rights is the country that allows trans people to reassign their gender. Because that's what it means to have individual liberty. And if you clamp down on that side of it, you're going to end up clamping down on this side of it as well. The two are necessarily dependent. You cannot have freedom unless the bigot has the freedom to be a bigot. Because one man's bigotry is another man's free thought. And it's entirely subjective. Now, of course, we can have a reasonable judgment on it, but that judgment will always be conditional to the context we live in and the times we live in.